George Hires was born into a wealthy household but always longed for more. The young heir of a long lineage of power and influence, he grew up in the panoramic hills of Denver, where ornate mansions stood as sentinels of opulence. The Hires name was revered in the city, known for its lineage of powerful and successful leaders. George was ambitious, intelligent, and restless, quickly excelling in business. With a keen eye for opportunities and an innate ability to make tough decisions, he expanded the family fortune and built a pharmaceutical empire. Innovative medicines, life-saving vaccines, and revolutionary therapies, George's contribution to the pharmaceutical industry was remarkable. He married Helena, a beautiful and intelligent woman who shared his ambition and passion for business. Helena was a strong partner and a reliable confidant. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. It was hard to tell where George ended and Helena began, such was the closeness and connection they shared. George and Helena's life was blessed with the arrival of Lance, their only son. George, always the determined patriarch, took on the responsibility of preparing Lance to inherit his legacy. He trained the boy with rigor and discipline, instilling in him the importance of leadership and wise decision-making. However, life is a roller coaster, and with all its ups, there also come downs. Helena, George's rock and beloved mother of Lance, succumbed to a sudden illness. George became a widower and felt the loss deeply. Nevertheless, he channeled his pain into protecting his legacy, and Lance became the focus of his attention. From that moment on, the young heir was prepared to take over the family business. George made a career out of making tough decisions and taking control, but over time, even he found himself yearning for a quieter life. He decided to retire and handed over the reins of the pharmaceutical empire to Lance, confident that he had trained his son well enough to follow in his footsteps. Lance Hires, George's only son, was a mirror image of his father in his determination and business acumen, but he carried a kindness in his heart that was undeniably his own. He married Kate Edwards, a woman of stunning beauty and a spirit as radiant as his. Kate was a renowned lawyer, intelligent and insightful, always seeking equity and justice. Both found in each other a partnership that transcended the bounds of love and mutual respect. Their marriage was blessed with the arrival of a daughter, Lauren Hires. From a young age, Lauren showed signs of being a combination of the best traits from her parents. The intelligence and business savvy of her grandfather George, the kindness of her father, and the passion for justice of her mother. With bright eyes and an infectious smile, Lauren was the heart of the Hires family. During this time, George, the patriarch of the family, began to feel the weight of the years. After decades devoted to building a pharmaceutical empire, he decided it was time to enjoy life beyond the rigid confines of business. It was a decision that surprised many, but George had always been a man of surprises. With the decision to retire, George entrusted his son with the responsibility of managing the pharmaceutical dynasty he had created. Lance, always the dedicated and competent son, accepted the responsibility with the gravity it deserved. George then set off for Europe, seeking a peaceful life and the chance to appreciate life's more subtle pleasures, away from corporate concerns. From the moment Lauren came into the world, Lance and Kate poured upon her a love as vast and deep as the ocean. Their home was always filled with laughter and valuable teachings. Kate and Lance strove to prepare Lauren for the future that awaited her, the young heiress of the Hires dynasty. "Remember, Lauren," Kate used to say, "no matter how high the mountain of business may be, never forget your humanity and the need for equity." Lance also used to share his wisdom. "Leadership, my daughter," he would say, looking into Lauren's bright eyes, "is not just about making decisions. It's about understanding people, their needs, their fears, and helping them see the light at the end of the tunnel." Unfortunately, when Lauren was only 19 years old, a cruel accident took Lance and Kate away from her. It was a storm in Lauren's life that forced her to adapt and grow faster than any young person should. However, she proved herself worthy of her parents' legacy. Lauren took over the company, showing an innate talent for business that surprised even the most experienced executives in the industry. She led meetings with confidence and made decisions with precision. Her parents had prepared their daughter well for the legacy she would inherit. In every decision she made, every strategy she implemented, Lauren carried with her the words of her parents. She made equity and understanding the foundation of her policies, just as Kate had taught her. And she also knew how to guide her team through difficulties, illuminating their paths, as Lance had said. Lauren, though young, proved to be a capable leader, honoring her parents' legacy and preparing herself to take the Hires dynasty to even greater heights. Lauren, despite being the heir to the Hires empire, never allowed herself to be swayed by the luxury and opulence of her position. She always had a keen and compassionate eye for those who worked hard and received little in return. It was during one of her visits to the production facilities that she met Julian. Julian was a humble worker, whose physical strength was only surpassed by the strength of his heart. He had lost his young wife and had since dedicated his life to raising his son, Aiden, with all the love he possessed. Amidst the noise of the factory and the humming of the machines, Lauren found herself drawn to Julian. There was honesty in his eyes and kindness in his actions that caught her attention. Lauren, curious and touched, began to converse with him. "You work very hard, Julian," she commented one day, observing as he carefully handled the machinery. "It's for Aiden," he replied with a gentle smile, his eyes filled with love for his son. "He deserves a better life." Those words etched themselves into Lauren's heart, and before she knew it, she was in love. It was an unlikely love, a wealthy heiress and a humble worker, but it was deep and true. Their relationship shook the foundation of the Hires family. The idea of a rich heiress marrying a humble worker was inconceivable to many. But Lauren, always true to herself and her principles, defied expectations and embraced Julian and Aiden into her life with an open heart. For 3 years, Lauren and Julian lived an intense love story, marked by moments of tenderness, laughter, and deep mutual respect. Over time, their love did not diminish, on the contrary, it grew in magnitude and beauty. "Julian," Lauren said one night under a starry sky, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Julian's eyes sparkled upon hearing Lauren's words, "Me too, Lauren. Let's get married." And so, they decided to seal their love in matrimony. However, George, the absent patriarch of the Hires family, did not approve of the union. He was a man of old-fashioned values, and the idea of his granddaughter marrying a worker was unthinkable. He chose to remain in Europe, a silent protest against the marriage. Lauren felt her grandfather's absence, but her sadness was softened by Julian's love and the affection she felt for Aiden. She began to treat the young boy as her own, loving him with all her heart. Lauren taught Aiden the value of love, hard work, and compassion, the same values her parents had instilled in her. Aiden, in turn, started to assist Lauren in the business. He was smart, curious, and quickly absorbed the knowledge Lauren shared with him. Over time, Aiden became an integral part of the Hires family business operation, contributing his own ideas and insights. Despite George's rejection and the challenges they encountered along the way, Lauren, Julian, and Aiden found happiness in their small family. They supported each other, laughed together, cried together, and above all, loved one another unconditionally. 5 years had passed since Lauren and Julian's marriage, 5 years of love and companionship. However, a shadow cast itself over their happiness with the arrival of George, the patriarch of the Hires family. George arrived from Europe with a clear objective: to destroy his granddaughter's marriage. He disapproved of Julian, the humble worker, as Lauren's husband. In his mind, he believed he was saving Lauren from a life unworthy of the Hires' legacy. With a heart hardened by prejudice, George directed his bitterness towards Julian. In their interactions, he wounded him with acidic words that cut like sharp blades. "You will never be worthy of the hire's name," George shot, the coldness in his eyes piercing Julian, making the loving husband of Lauren feel smaller. Aidan, the young boy whom Lauren had embraced as her own, was not spared from George's cruelty. The first time they met, the innocent boy ran to the elder, affectionately calling him Grandpa. The response he received, however, was a stern reprimand. "You and your father are nothing but parasites," George scolded him, the bitter words staining Aidan's moment of joy. But George didn't stop there. He continued to disdain Aidan, seizing every opportunity to remind him of his place. "You will never be a true Hires," he told Aidan on one occasion, his voice cold and cruel like the winter wind, tearing at the young man's heart. It was a toxic atmosphere that George created, his poison attempting to corrupt the home that Lauren, Julian, and Aidan had built with so much love and care. George made his advances away from Lauren's eyes, but the truth has a way of coming to light. One day, Lauren caught George mistreating Aidan. She felt a wave of anger engulf her heart upon hearing her grandfather's cruel words. "Enough, George!" Lauren intervened, her eyes shining with indignation. "Aidan is a Hires just as much as you or I. And the Hires name stands for love, respect, and compassion. Things that you seem to have forgotten." Lauren's words resonated in the room, a harsh rebuke that left George speechless. For a moment, the patriarch of the Hires family was rendered speechless, surprised by the strength and determination of his granddaughter. Lauren defended her husband and her son, not allowing George's cruelty to tarnish the love that resided in her home. In a bold move, George summoned Julian for a private meeting. The air was thick with tension as the patriarch of the Hires family offered a proposal that left Julian dumbfounded. "Julian," George began, his eyes hard as stone, "I am willing to offer you a substantial sum of money to leave my granddaughter alone. You could live like a king with the money I'm willing to give you." George waved a check with an amount that could make anyone hesitate. However, Julian looked at George with a firmness that defied the old man. "You don't understand, George," Julian said, his voice filled with conviction. "I love Lauren. And there is no amount of money in the world that could make me leave the woman I love." George was stunned by Julian's refusal. Wealth had always been his shield, his means of controlling things around him. However, he encountered an impenetrable strength in Julian's love for Lauren. "Nothing will separate us, George. My love for Lauren is true. It cannot be bought or sold," Julian declared, making it clear that the power of the love he had for Lauren was beyond George's reach. Julian's refusal to succumb to George's bribery was a powerful rebuke. It showed the old man that there were things in the world that no amount of money could buy: true love, loyalty, and family. Exhausted from his failed attempts, George, in a last gasp of manipulation, turned to Zachary, Lauren's ex-boyfriend, hailing from a family as rich and prestigious as the Hires. He called Zachary on a cloudy afternoon, George's measured and articulate voice resonating over the phone. "Zachary, my dear, I have a proposition that may be of interest to you." Zachary, a man of questionable character who, like George, believed that money could buy anything, responded, "I'm listening, George." George continued, "My granddaughter, Lauren, seems to have lost her way by marrying a simple worker. She deserves someone from her own class, someone who can provide her with the life she's accustomed to. Someone like you, Zachary." Zachary smiled over the phone, recognizing the opportunity presented to him. "I've always had a soft spot for Lauren, George. And I agree, she deserves more. I can be that more." Thus, with George's words sounding like music to his ears, Zachary agreed to the plan. He was willing to try to rekindle the old romance with Lauren, manipulated by George's words and seduced by the promise of power that a union with Lauren would bring. George's sinister plot was unfolding perfectly, while Lauren's innocence and genuine love were being threatened by his manipulations. With his Machiavellian scheme in motion, George organized a dinner at the Hyers mansion on a night he knew Julian would be absent. Lauren's surprise at seeing Zachary there was palpable, her heart skipping a beat upon encountering her ex-boyfriend. "Zachary," she exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" Zachary, fueled by George's certainty that he could win back Lauren, responded confidently, "Lauren, darling, I've missed you so much. I've come to reclaim what we lost." Meanwhile, George, observing the scene from a safe distance, felt a twinge of satisfaction. His trap was unfolding perfectly. At that crucial moment, Julian returned home unexpectedly. As he walked in, the scene that greeted him was a shock. Zachary, driven by his own ambition and manipulated by George, forcefully kissed Lauren. "Lauren!" Julian exclaimed, shock giving way to pain and betrayal. Lauren pulled away from Zachary, surprised and horrified, but the damage was already done. Julian, believing he had been betrayed, gathered his things in a silent and painful frenzy. "Julian, wait!" Lauren cried out, but it was in vain. Julian left, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts and George's poisonous victory. Feeling betrayed and wounded, Lauren glared at George and Zachary with a revolted expression. She knew deep down that this scenario had been orchestrated by her grandfather, who had always opposed her marriage to Julian. "You," she pointed at George, her face pale with anger. "This is your doing, isn't it?" George and Zachary exchanged satisfied glances, Lauren's words only reinforcing the sense of triumph they felt. "Lauren, my dear," George began, irony dripping from his words. "Now you are free from this inconvenience. You can finally marry someone worthy of you, someone from our class." Zachary, joining in the game, added, "And you know, Lauren, I've always been here for you. I always will be." The sarcasm and manipulation were evident in the words of both men. They looked at Lauren as if she were a pawn in a chess game, believing they had control. However, still shocked and hurt, Lauren could only think of Julian and how her happiness had been stolen by this sinister plot. With a broken heart and determination burning in her eyes, Lauren rushed to the car. "Julian needs to hear the truth," she muttered to herself, George and Zachary's words still echoing in her ears. The roads were damp and slippery, the city lights reflecting on the wet surface. Nonetheless, Lauren persisted, her thoughts solely focused on Julian. And it was on that stormy night, with the road gleaming in the headlights' reflection and the asphalt slippery under the relentless rain, that everything changed. Lauren, her mind flooded with thoughts of Julian, failed to notice the dangerous curve ahead. In a terrible instant, her distraction led her to the brink of disaster. The tires screeched in protest, sliding on the wet surface. The vehicle spun in a chaotic whirlwind, a deadly dance of metal and light. The impact came with staggering force. Lauren's car collided with the barrier, the metal twisting in a deadly embrace. The sound of twisted metal and shattering glass filled the night, followed by an eerie silence. Trapped in the mangled wreckage of what was once her car, Lauren was unconscious. Her breath was weak, life hanging by a thread in the face of the violence of the accident. The face that once radiated determination was now pale and motionless, life slowly slipping away in the chaos that unfolded in a fateful instant. In the hospital, the atmosphere was tense. Doctors hurriedly moved, their faces grave as they discussed Lauren's critical condition. The shadow of uncertainty loomed over everyone, whether Lauren would emerge alive from that state was unknown. When Julian heard about the accident, he felt as if the ground disappeared from beneath his feet. Yes, he was angry with Lauren, but he also loved her with an intensity that seemed to tear his heart apart. The idea that she could have died while seeking him out, to clarify what had really happened, only heightened his torment. He rushed to the hospital, each beat of his heart synchronized with Lauren's name. But upon arrival, he found a familiar and unwanted figure blocking his path: George. "Julian, you've caused enough trouble already," George grumbled, his voice as cold as ice. He looked at Julian with evident disdain, antipathy gleaming in his gray eyes. "Lauren doesn't need you now." George's contempt was a direct blow to Julian's chest. He was there for Lauren, no matter what George said or did. Even with hatred and guilt swirling within him, Julian clung to the hope that Lauren would survive, and that they could fix what had been broken. Julian, however, was inconsolable. The woman he loved hung between life and death, and he was being kept from seeing her. George's cruel plan seemed to be succeeding, but Julian still had hope. Hope that Lauren would recover. Hope that, in the end, true love would prevail. After long days of tension and uncertainty, a glimmer of hope finally arrived. Lauren, against all odds, slowly emerged from the coma. Each beat of her heart was a testament to her tenacity, each breath a sign of her indomitable spirit. The first time she opened her eyes, it was to see the imposing figure of her grandfather, George, standing by her bedside. His expression was a mix of relief and concern, but Lauren could feel the coldness that still permeated his words and gestures. Summoning her strength, Lauren stared at George, her eyes emitting unwavering determination. "George," she said, her voice low but firm. "I want you to leave. Now." George appeared surprised, but Lauren did not falter. She needed to confront Julian, she needed to clarify everything. George, with a furrowed brow, finally nodded in agreement, his wounded pride visible as he left the room. With George out of the way, Lauren called Julian. She could see the concern in his eyes, the pain and guilt etched on his features. But it was time to set things straight. "Julian," she began, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Julian's heart skip a beat. "I need you to know the truth." It was George, he orchestrated it all. And so, with a courage she hardly knew she possessed, Lauren began unraveling the web of lies that had kept them apart. What would you do in Lauren's place? Share in the comments. As Lauren explained George's machinations, Julian's gaze softened, transitioning from shock to understanding, and finally to relief. The truth was finally clear: George, not Lauren, had been the architect of the betrayal that nearly cost them everything. I'm so sorry, Lauren," Julian said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I should have trusted you. I should have." Lauren interrupted, gently placing a finger on Julian's lips. "We were both deceived, Julian," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But that ends now. We can start anew." And so, in that hospital room, Lauren and Julian reconciled. They made a silent pact, a promise to face the future together, not allowing anything, not even George's influence, to rob them of the happiness they found in each other. As they left the hospital, their lives seemed bright and full of possibilities. Lauren, stronger and more determined than ever, took the reins of the family business and proved to be a natural leader. Julian, always by her side, brought a touch of humanity and kindness to the business, proving that his love for Lauren had always been more important than wealth or status. As for George, Lauren made a decision that surprised everyone: she banned her grandfather from visiting them. The man who had been the pillar of the Hyers family, who had built an empire with his cunning and determination, was forced to face the loneliness of his twilight years. Lauren, Julian, and Aidan, united by love and mutual respect, thrived while George was left to confront the bitter taste of his own actions. The story of the Hyers family is a lesson that true love conquers all adversity, and that family unity is stronger than any difference in class or wealth. And George? Well, he had to learn the hard way that love and respect cannot be bought or manipulated, but must be earned through kindness and understanding. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and share. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any videos.